The Chicago Bears just upset the LA Rams with a score of 24-18, and DeAndre Swift had his best score as his best game as a Chicago Bear. You guys can see, obviously, Detroit Lions fan, we're the ones that drafted DeAndre Swift, and his potential was always there. And we saw flashes of it being in Detroit. Then he goes to Philadelphia last year, and for a brief time at the beginning of the year, he led the league in rushing yards. He didn't finish as strong as he started, but in Chicago, it's taken him some time to get going. There's not really been an offensive line for the Chicago Bears. Now, one of the things about DeAndre Swift is that we talked about was his toughness. And then as his time in Detroit came to an end, it was more of a question of, did he really want to be there? But today, he actually showed out, man. Did a move where he jumped over a defender and took that thing to the house, which wound up being the go-ahead touchdown. Now, let's take a look real quick at DeAndre Swift stats, man. I'm not like nostalgic for former Detroit Lions, but when I watch him, I can't help but think about the time he spent with the team. He actually had 7 yards for 72 receptions. 7 yards for, 7 receptions for 72 yards. And he actually had, as far as rushing is concerned, he had 16 carries for 93 yards. It was the first time in so many years that a Bears running back had at least 70 yards receiving and 70 yards rushing. Now, if we look at his stats for the game, it took DeAndre Swift quite a while to keep going. One of the things, too, as when it came to when the Lions drafted him, the thing out of college was, The Lions took Kerryon Johnson before, and he had a whole bunch of carries. Then you have DeAndre Swift, who didn't get as many carries with Georgia out of college. And one of the things about DeAndre Swift was, could he be an every down back? He was never that with Detroit. It was always a complimentary game that they had. So over the past season and now 4 games, he's been getting more of a workload. And I must say that he's kind of been defying the odds that we remember him in Detroit. He spent a lot of time hurt. One of the things that, like I said, the biggest question about DeAndre Swift was his toughness. How many would he play with injury? And I remember Deuce Staley, our running back coach at the time, kind of called him out for playing while he was injured and his toughness. But this is, so far, you can see he's actually gotten a bigger workload every single game. 10 carries for 30 yards, average 3 point. The second game against the Houston Texans, 14 carries, 18 yards, a measly 1.3, coming off 13 carries, 20 yards against the Colts, a measly 1.5, and then 16 carries, 93 yards for 5.8 yards, 1 tutty. His first touchdown as a Chicago Bear took him 4 games and the long of 36. And that was the same play that I was describing about him jumping over the defender to go and take it to the house. And that wound up being the go-ahead touchdown. So DeAndre Swift, man, always had potential. He always had, and if he would have stayed in Detroit and we kept David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, after we drafted Jahmyr on day 1 of the NFL draft, we wind up trading DeAndre Swift to the Philadelphia Eagles. I want to say it was day 3, we traded him away. But had he stayed in Detroit, man, we would have had, in my opinion, the best running back room in the National Football League. I think it's really close now for the Lions. But, hey, kudos to DeAndre Swift, man, for now in his 5th year, got a monster contract with the Chicago Bears. No doubt after that performance that he had with the Philadelphia Eagles and had his best game as a Bear. One thing I can say is Detroit had the O-line, but we didn't know if we were getting Swift's all. And then you go to Philadelphia, and we don't know. They had a great offensive line. You would argue that between last year's Detroit Lions and Philadelphia Eagles, the top 2 best offensive lines in football. And now you go to and I have no doubt that the Bears' offensive line is why DeAndre Swift is struggling so much, because they have no offensive line. And today he made that thing happen, had his best game as a Chicago Bear. And if we go look at his receiving yards, he had 0 receptions in game 1. He had 4 for 5 yards. He had 0 in game 1. He had 4 receptions for 24 yards in game 2, 2 receptions for 22 yards in game 3, and then 7 receptions for 72 yards in game 4. That's one thing DeAndre Swift could do. He could receive the football. He would dead leg, man, and put you on skates as a Detroit Lion. So kudos to DeAndre Swift and the Chicago Bears. I did not have them winning this game, but here they are at 2-2 and very much in this thing. for the NFC North, man. So I'm telling you, man, there's no other sport like football. You guys are awesome, man. Thank you for watching the channel and subscribing. Continue to do that for more NFL content, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Peace.